Episode 140 of the Interpretation Station is called to order. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode. This is an episode that's nominally going to be for my Russian-speaking followers, subscribers, whatever you may like to consider yourself as. Now we're doing something a bit different, a bit novel today. I must admit that my intellectual curiosity has sort of got the better of me for this episode. What I was thinking was, obviously, it's going to focus on the conflict in Ukraine. Now, over the last few months, obviously, I've done quite a few episodes featuring statements by people like Putin and other sort of senior Russian officials about the situation, about the conflict in Ukraine, from the various ambassadors and so on. And we've had comparatively very little from the Ukrainian side. I mean, that's obviously because mostly when the Ukrainians speak at least at the UN, they speak English, so there's not really much there to go on. But occasionally they do speak. Sometimes they speak Russian, and I have featured a couple of their statements from the UN at least, seeing what they have to say in the Russian. But what I thought I would do is I was having a look around, surfing the old internet, and I went to the page of the Ukrainian president. Okay, that's president.gov.ua, just to take a look at some speeches, some statements that Zelensky has delivered, just out of curiosity. And it's interesting. So on the Ukrainian president's page, you have there's a page in Ukrainian, there's a page in Russian, there's a page in English. And okay, so I was looking through the Russian statements, and I was looking at the Ukrainian, and the syntax. I don't know Ukrainian, okay, but the syntax is virtually identical when I was looking at it. All that's different are the words. The words are different, but the order that the words come out from the Ukrainian to the Russian are virtually identical. And so I thought to myself that maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea. It would be an interesting exercise to do a breakdown of one of Zelensky's speeches. And so that is what I am going to do in today's episode. Now, what are the sort of advantages? What are the benefits of doing this? Well, it gives you a bit of balance. Okay, so I've had Putin's statements featured quite prominently, so it's good to hear what the other side has to say. Gives you more, shall we say, a holistic overview of the conflict, of the stakes, what's being fought over. I think it makes you slightly better prepared to know what's going to come at you when you hear both sides, shall we say. Also, as I say, from time to time, the Ukrainians do speak Russian. I recall when I was working back in New York in the early days, so when it all kicked off back in 2014, then 2015, 2016, I would be assigned to Security Council meetings on the situation in Lugansk and Donetsk. And when the Ukrainians spoke, for example, sometimes the Ukrainian permanent representative there would speak Russian. On a number of occasions, there were sort of little tit for tats between the Ukrainian ambassador and the then Russian ambassador, Vitaly Churkin. I can't remember the name of the Ukrainian ambassador at the time, but they were certainly pretty much the same generation. They were about the same age. They probably went up. They probably came up through the diplomatic ranks of the Soviet Union together. I think they knew each other fairly well. And the Ukrainian, for example, he would deliver the first statement in English, but then it would get down to rights of reply when it would really get quite tense. And the Ukrainian would then be almost speaking to Churkin as two people who know each other might speak, giving it direct in Russian. So it's good to know that. So it's good to have an idea of what to expect from the Ukrainians in the event that they speak Russian. And it's just an interesting exercise. It's just interesting to see what the two sides are saying than always just obviously I work from Russian, so that's what I care about. You know, my job is to make sure that the Russian delegates are properly understood. But it's just, as I say, as an intellectual exercise, it's good to see what the Ukrainians are saying as well. Especially we've had Putin, so now let's see what Zelensky has to say. So I've taken this most recent speech of his that was posted. I'm going to share the page with you. We'll just work straight from the that's website. So here we are. So this should be good for you Russian interpreters, and also any Ukrainian people who work from Ukrainian. Maybe you can draw something from it as well in terms of how to go into going into English, what expressions we can think about using. Ukraine, obviously, you also they feature here the original Zelensky statement, the actual audio, so you can practice from that. And then you can record yourself, come and watch the episode, watch me break the statement down. So here we go. And we'll just so here we go. Делаем все, чтобы получить еще больше эффективного современного оружия обращения президента Украины. So let's just go through it like this, and I'll just do a sight translation as we go and stop at the most interesting part. Желаю здоровья, уважаемые украинцы. So I guess, желаю, if you want to get literal, you could say, I wish you all good health, dear Ukrainians. I will briefly report on the past week. Okay, отчитываться. Sometimes in English I want to just quickly take stock of the last week. Perhaps in English, if it was an English speaker, they might say, let's just recap on the past week. First of all, I want to thank all of our бойцов, our fighters, who valiantly, чрезвычайно храбро, okay, if you say extremely bravely, but I think if you say courageously, valiantly, that would probably, in one word, sum up the two words чрезвычайно храбро, so who valiantly, in the hottest points along the front, горячие точки, so yeah, probably in the hottest points along the front, сверхчеловеческими усилиями, with superhuman efforts, сдерживают врага, are containing the enemy, are repelling the enemy. Usually for сдерживание, I would say contain. There was the whole policy during the Cold War of containment, which I think was in Russian сдерживание. So here, because we're talking about specifically what's happening on the battlefield, who are containing or repelling. The Russian army has not changed tactics. The occupiers know that they проиграют украинцам в прямых боях, that they are losing to the Ukrainians in direct battles, maybe another in прямых боях, in head-to-head battles. I mean, if you said direct battles, that would probably be fine. I'm just thinking in English what the best thing to say would be. So maybe head-to-head, in full frontal battles. Уступает в мастерстве. They're not as skillful. They're no match in terms of skill. And therefore the enemy is counting on his artillery, и тотальные обстрелы, and all-out shelling. Okay, обстрел, that's a very important word when it comes to the battlefield, so shelling. So it's counting on artillery and full-on shelling. They are trying to destroy everything in front of them and to зайти на развалины, and to come through the rubble, come through the ruins. For развалины. I'm grateful to каждому и каждой, each and every one of you, who even in such conditions are still repelling the occupier in the Donbass. Again, stierżiwać, holding back the occupier in the Donbass, in Kharkov. Nikolaevskom направление. So I think in Ukrainian that's Mykolaiv, and in Russian Nikolaev. Or yeah. So I think if the Ukrainian president's speaking, you want to make sure you want to be really make an effort to get the Ukrainian names. So I think they call it Mykolaiv, if I'm not mistaken. Everywhere where сейчас самое острое противостояние, everywhere where the most fierce fighting is going on, or where the heaviest fighting is going on, they're good collocations for fighting, especially, well, fierce fighting, because of the F, the fierce fighting. That's a good way of remembering it. But as I say, we also I don't think you want to talk. I know often for противостояние, there's you use confrontation, the word confrontation. I don't think it quite fits here as an native English speaker. I think you would be talking about everywhere where the fighting is fiercest, for example. This week, the Ukrainian armed forces, or the armed forces of Ukraine. So I think their official name is the Armed Forces of Ukraine. I've heard the acronym used quite a bit, the AFU. So this is maybe again, when you first use it here, Вооруженные силы Украины, maybe you want to call them the Armed Forces of Ukraine the first time, but then you can refer to them as the AFU after that. И наша разведка, our intelligence, have achieved impressive results, мощных результатов. I think maybe that's what we'd say in English most naturally. Impressive results in destroying the logistics of the Russian army and тыловых baz оккупантов. This is an interesting expression, тыловых baz. Maybe the rear bases. Often, I think that's the first word. If you go to like Multitran or whatever, any dictionary, when you talk about tыл in Russian, they'll talk about the rear. I love reading these old books, Second World War, and I'd read some of these Russian comics or books about battles in World War II, and they always talking about what was happening in the rear, on the home front. But I think here, I think you could say the rear base of the occupiers, the support base, logistics base, one of those for the Tilovia baz. And every strike against, you're going to have a couple of interesting words here. Skladom here and skaplinium. So maybe here, skladom боеприпасов. So against ammunitions depots of the enemy. Ammunition dumps. Dump, depot. Against their командным пунктам, against their command centers, their command points. По скоплениям российской техники. So the скопление of Russian technika. Often the word I like for technika, by the way, is hardware. Okay, I mean you can maybe say equipment, but sometimes technika, when it comes to the battlefield, sometimes hardware works well. Again, here I was thinking maybe you could say against concentrations of Russian hardware, for example. So against concentrations of Russian hardware. Are saving the lives, all of our lives, the lives of Ukrainian military and civilians, or of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians. Of course, I want to thank our partners, all of those who are поставляют, who are providing, who are supplying Ukraine with the requisite weaponry, the necessary weaponry. In particular, this week, Bill Soglasovan. So you could we this, we agreed on, or there was an agreement on the latest support package from the US, which will contain, you've got to sometimes be careful with the Russian when to spot the future tenses. Okay, so this is future. This is technically a future tense, and so the minion, the Russian minion, the Ukrainian minion, might want to be certain that he's hearing, that it's in the future, that it's on its way. So just watch out for those, as I say, those future tenses, which will contain munitions for the HIMARS. Okay, we'll heard now. We all know what the HIMARS are probably by now. As you can see here, the full name is the High Mobility Artillery Rocket Systems, HIMARS. That's good. It's good to know what that. Obviously, we almost exclusively hear the acronym, but it's not a bad idea to actually know what the actual the acronym is short for. So, High Mobility Artillery Rocket Systems. And I thought it would just be interesting to look up what the Russian sort of official translation of that was. Looking here at Multitram, высокомобильная реактивная система залпового огня, RSZO. Now, often in English we have this the acronym MLRS, Multiple Launch Rocket Systems, which is usually that RSZO. Okay, but the high mobility part of it, that's the высокомобильная. That turns it into maybe a VRSZO. So just be aware. I think generally in Russian you just hear they just say HIMARS. So basically the Russian. The Russians call it a high mobile MLRS. As I say, that RSZO, that is what they call the multiple launch rocket system. So again, it's just good to be familiar with both what HIMARS actually stands for in English and how the Russians or the Ukrainians, might render that into Russian or Ukrainian. So let's continue. So thank you very much. They are all being used максимально точно, as precisely or as carefully as possible, using it for the general strategy of our defense. We are doing our utmost, делаем все, чтобы, we're doing our utmost to, we're making sure to, I think we could also say in English, we're making sure to receive more effective and modern weaponry or up-to-date weaponry. So we're doing our best to receive even more effective and up-to-date weaponry. We've managed to resume морской экспорт, maritime export, export by sea of Ukrainian agricultural products. Our ports in the Black Sea are снова работают, are working again. And though it's too early to give a оценка прогресса, although it's too early to give a general progress report, a progress assessment. Okay, for оценка, usually I'll go with assessment. That's my sort of go-to word for оценка. Maybe we talk about progress reports, but I think either or is fine. We can still say that it's positive, both for our country и для нашего государства, both for our country и для всех наших партнеров, and for all our other partners. However, the key risk in terms of security, до сих пор не снят, still remains. Okay, literally hasn't been allayed, hasn't been mitigated. But I mean, I think you could perfectly reasonably just say the key risk still remains. The threat of Russian provocations and terrorist acts remains. And everyone needs to realize this. Realize, everyone needs to be aware of this. But if our partners выполняют свою часть обязательств. Now, if you're going to go for a sort of more literal word-for-word rendering of that, we might say if our partners deliver on their obligations and guarantee the safety, security of supplies, that's a sort of more word-for-word rendering. I think, again, in English, maybe someone saying this in English would say, provided our partners keep their part of the bargain, for выполнить свою часть обязательства. It's maybe slightly less formal, but I can imagine an English-speaking an English speaker in this in that situation saying that. So either or is fine. And this will truly решить, again, future tense, okay? This will truly resolve the global food crisis, продовольственный кризис, food crisis. We shouldn't forget that восстановление, restoring, resuming our maritime export, or our export by sea, стало возможным, was possible thanks above all to our soldiers, to all those who are protecting Одещину. Now, I must say, this is a reference to Odessa, but I've not actually heard this used before to describe Odessa. Maybe if any viewers are out there, maybe you can shed a bit of light on why he's saying here Одещина, not just Odessa. There must be some sort of reason. I've been to Odessa, by the way. I went to Odessa I was there in 2007. Jeez, a long time ago. I remember the Potemkin steps. Remember the beach, swimming in the Black Sea. Bit murky, I seem to recall, but Odessa was a beautiful city. Anyway, you don't need to hear my old holiday tales. Let's get back to this. To all those who are protecting Odessa and to those who helped liberate Zminowa. Okay, so that's the famous Snake Island. Okay, that's an important reference, geographical location to just be familiar with. Zmínlia Ostrova, I think it is. So the liberation of Snake Island. They are simply heroes. A week ago, значительно расширили возможности Украины на африканском направлении. So again, here it's a sentence which really launches in with the verb first. You have to wait for the. So you can do this two ways. You can wait for them to hear the subject of the sentence, which is возможности Украины, and then just say the Ukrainian possibilities significantly increased with regards to Africa. But again, if you want to, stick with the syntax of the speaker, it's important to be able to switch that расширили, turn it into a noun. You could say there was significant expansion. There was a significant increase in the possibilities for Ukraine with respect to Africa. There were new contacts with leaders of states and conversations with journalists. Продолжу эту работу на следующей неделе. So again, I will be continuing that work next week. A series of переговоры, negotiations, of talks is planned. Unfortunately, there's been a significant escalation of the situation. Обострение ситуации. There's been a significant, maybe you could just say a significant escalation with respect to the Zaporozhye atomic power station, or nuclear power station. So AES is атомная электрическая станция. So atomic power station, just power station. Russian terrorists were the first in the world to use a power station or an atomic station for terror. The biggest in Europe. We will be обращать внимание мира на это. We'll be flagging this up to the whole world. We'll be alerting the whole world to this. Maybe it's a good way of saying that in this context. And we will be insisting on new sanctions against Russia for creating this global threat. Несмотря на то, что российский обстрел, now even though Russian shelling of the power station, now it's worth pointing out that the official name, at least in English, of this facility is the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. At least there you go, that's what they say on Wikipedia. In which case we might say, so even though Russian shelling of the nuclear plant is one of the most dangerous crimes against Ukrainians and all Europeans, against the right to life, каждого человека, of every individual. For some reason, there's been нет отчета, there's been no report, и даже простого сообщения от Amnesty International об этом. There's been no report or even comment from Amnesty International about this. Okay, so I guess this is referring to this slightly controversial report that's come out this week. Okay, so I'm filming this on the 7th of August, just to give you some idea exactly of the time frame that I'm doing this statement from. This is the week that there was a report that came out from Amnesty that was rather critical of some of the tactics of the Ukrainian armed forces. So there's been no report, or even, as I say, for soобщение, I will usually actually say report. There's been reports of casualties. Often in Russian, I'll use this word сообщение, from the news. But okay, if you want something, because we've said report for отчет, maybe we would say or comment from Amnesty International about this. Очень красноречивое молчание. Okay, so literally it would be it's a very elegant silence. But perhaps a more elegant way of putting that in English might be to say their silence speaks volumes. I think that's a good sort of idiom to be able to use appropriately. So their silence speaks volumes. It shows once more the manipulative selectivity of this organization. This week, there have been new sanctions steps by Canada and the US. An important decision, приняла Швейцария, was taken by Switzerland to support the 7th sanctions packet of the EU. Or rather, I think they use package in English, the 7th EU sanctions package. The general trend towards toughen усиление sanctions, if you want just something more interesting than just strengthening sanctions, maybe toughening sanctions, remains unchanged or continues. Остается неизменной, again in English, if we could just say continues, and will in future increase for the terrorist state the price for this terror against our people. It will make the terrorist state pay a higher price for this terror against our people. I want to thank all those who have been developing our state charitable platform, United 24, and all the ambassadors for this platform, Andrei Shevchenko, Elina Svitolina, Lev Schreiber, Imagine Dragons, Demna. So these are various personalities. Andrei Shevchenko, you may know from the world of football. I know him. Imagine Dragons, they're a famous pop group. Oh no, pop's doing them a bit of a disservice. Rock. My kids like them a lot. They're good music. And these other people, I'm not so familiar with these other people, I must confess. But there we go. So Elina Svitolina is a tennis player. Ukrainian tennis player. Lev Schreiber is an actor, director, screenwriter. Demna appears to be a fashion designer. I'm not too familiar with the name, so you have to forgive me for that. This week, подводили итоги 3 месяцев. So there was again, let's try and turn this into a noun, okay? It's going to make it much easier to render this sentence. This week, so подвести итоги, classic solution for that is to take stock. So there was a stock take of 3 months of United 24's work. 6 billion grivni has been, more than 6 billion grivni have been collected in contributions for the восстановление, for the reconstruction, for the rebuilding. Maybe for rebuilding is a very good word. It's a very good versatile word, okay? Because rebuild, you can use it intransitively to help the country rebuild. Okay, and you can use it transitively to help rebuild the country. Okay, so with recover, for example, you say to help the country recover. You use it intransitively, but you can't say to help recover the country. That doesn't quite make sense in English. You can't use it transitively. So the good thing about, as I say, rebuild is that you can use it both for transitively and intransitively. For rebuilding, for equipment for hospitals, na zakupku for purchasing, for the procurement of ambulances, автомобили скорой помощи, scores of ambulances, десятки, okay? So dozens, maybe you can say dozens of ambulances have been purchased. There's already the first vertolyot, the first helicopter that was purchased, приобретены, or acquired using funds collected by United 24. It will be used to save the wounded. We've been able to attract assistance from more than 100 countries. Одно из самых ответственных направлений, and I think a good shortcut here would be just to say one of the top priorities, okay? Rather than saying one of the most responsible areas. I mean, that doesn't sound like good English, does it? So just one of the top priorities for August and September is the realizacja, is implementation of our fast recovery plan. What needs to be done in territory liberated from the enemy to give people the conditions for a normal life and to prepare for the autumn and winter season. I think season you could theoretically just drop. Altogether, 1,060. So for населенных пунктов, you could say like, I'll sometimes say towns and villages, okay? Or a more sort of just a generic expression like population centers have been liberated. So find one that you're sort of comfortable with, because I'm sure you know that's something you hear a lot, населенные пункты in Russian. So population centers. And the absolute majority of those need significant or major rebuilding work, reconstruction work, разминирование, demining, and the building of social facilities. Yeah, разминирование, you can have demining, mine clearance. I'm grateful to all of our partners who have присоединились к соответствующим работам, who've helped us in this work, who've joined in this work. In particular, this week, the Estonian delegation visited the Zhytomyrsk Oblast to help with rebuilding, okay, reconstruction. Estonia was first as part of the fast recovery plan to choose facilities for financing. We are working with diplomats and with companies and working on all other spheres which require support and reconstruction work, rebuilding work. We believe in our protectors, the защитников. Let's help the defense. Let's keep our unity, сохраняем единство, let's keep our unity, and do our best to ensure Ukrainian victory. It will happen, она будет. Eternal glory to our soldiers, glory to Ukraine, which I think is a sort of typical closing lines. Often you'll hear that spoken by the Ukrainian delegations at the UN, saying Slava Ukrainam. So there you have it. That's Volodymyr Zelensky's statement from the 6th of August. I will put the website there in the description box down below so that you can either go and practice it live if you're a Ukrainian speaker, or if you just, as I say, if you want to go through it to sort of practice your Russian. As I said, there's some very good battle. This is good for like battlefield vocabulary. This talk about Tilovich baz, commands, rear bases, support bases, skladom, боеприпасов, командные пункты скопления, техники. That's what I think. Yeah, that's what this statement is best for. Обстрелы, прямой бой. So, I mean, if you have learned any new words from this, if you've got any suggestions yourselves to make for any of the vocabulary that we've run into in this text, please do put them in the comments below. It'd be much appreciated. It's always good to have contributions from more than just one person. It helps me expand my knowledge as well when I hear from you guys, when you guys suggest other alternatives that I may not have thought of, that may not have occurred to me. So yeah, please do put that in the comments. Other than that, as usual, please do, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe and share with any of your friends. That's pretty much all for today's episode. You'll find links also to other episodes that I've done with statements on the Ukrainian conflict in the playlist. And so, yeah, I hope you've learned a few new things in today's episode. And all that remains for me then to do today is to say that episode 140 of the Interpretation Station stands adjourned.